Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So it's time to get some basic components ready for the wedding. And these are some tiny gift boxes that I've received. The brown one is from Jolene from Tiny Keyhole Minis. The white one is from Laura. And the purple box and the bag are from my friend Lorraine, who gave me the toolbox. I will leave links in the description for those previous videos, but I didn't realize the package in the bag actually came out. It's actually a 12 scale Barbie. And although Barbie hadn't been invented during the setting of my dollhouse, I still think it'll be a lovely gift for the girls at Christmas time. So let me tuck it away safely so I'll know where it is when it's time to set up the dollhouses for Christmas time again. So today I really want to focus on some of the really basic parts of the wedding ceremony, and I'm going to start out with the flower girls baskets. Now I've got these lovely flowers and I've got some ribbon, I've got some lace and some other things. And I'm only going to need a teeny weeny little bit because the little baskets are so small. And you see here the opening to the baskets is only about the size of the tip of my pinky. So I started out by adding a few of the little lovely pink flowers that I had. And it was really nice that I had light pink and the darker pink. And after adding those few little flowers, I thought it looked really cute. The only thing I thought it needed at this point was a little bow. So I pulled out another one of my stashes of what are you keeping that for? And found some tiny pieces of ribbon just big enough to tie to put on the sides of the little baskets. Now I did have to take my time. This is tiny silk ribbon, and it was the perfect shade of pink for these baskets. And although I want everything at the wedding to look beautiful, I still want it to look modest and sensible. This ceremony won't be extravagant because the focus is on the beauty of the union instead of how expensive and extravagant the decorations of the ceremony and the reception are. Now, after I arranged the little flower berries in one basket and tied the ribbon, I thought the first one was really cute, so I went on to complete the second one. So, dolls, this was one of my biggest challenges for the whole wedding ceremony, coming up with what to do or how to set it up for it to look like an actual wedding ceremony. Now, the dolls are getting married inside the rooming house because I don't have a church or a chapel yet. So I had to figure out how to make some type of archway or something where the dolls actually have their ceremony with the minister and all. I didn't have a pulpit, and I really didn't want to take the time to make a pulpit or anything like that. So I decided to add gesso to these two communion cups. Adding the gesso gives the little urns a little texture, which will make it easier for me to add a finish or even add paint. Now, while I was waiting for the gesso to dry, I started to play around with a couple candlesticks that I had and tried to fit a few candles in them because I really wanted to have the setup for a unity candle for the ceremony. And that means I need to come up with a table to sit it on safely while the ceremony is going on. So I really need to work that out. While the ideas were bubbling around, I started to think about other things that I wanted to use at the reception. And I had that little tiered tray. I've got the wine glasses, and I have champagne glasses. And although my dolls don't drink, this is a special occasion. And here I am comparing my yellow champagne to the ones from the Punch Bowl set. Wow, my champagne looks more like Mountain Dew. So while I was waiting for the urns to dry, I remember I had this wonderful wired vine that was given to me in one of my craft supply bundles. And so I twisted the vine around in the shape of an arch, twisted it really tight at the bottom so that it'll stick down into the urns. And I had to figure out something that I could use to make the vine stay inside the little urns. Now, this is what they look like after 2 or 3 coats of the gesso was dry. And I thought it would look really cute if I put them in there like that, but I needed something to make them stay secure and add a little weight to them. But I didn't have any clay, but I did have some milliput. Now, Dow's milliput is like a 2-part epoxy, and you have to mix equal parts of the 2 different colors together. And once it's hardened, it can be sanded, drilled, or carved, but you definitely want to work quickly because it will begin to harden almost immediately after you mix it. Now, dolls, I did put on my nitrile gloves because when you're mixing it, the mixture gets kind of black and it gets your hands all sticky and it will transfer to other things, so I prefer to mix it with gloves on. So I use the gloves mainly because it's a little messy, not toxic. Now, after it was mixed thoroughly and it was a solid black color, I packed it into the urns and then shoved my little wire vine down into it to allow it to dry and harden. Now this will harden solid. It does not need to go in the oven or be baked. And I must emphasize, this is not polymer clay. It's epoxy, and it's activated for hardening by the mixing of the two colors. Milliput is really great for so many things, and before this video is over, I'm going to show you something else it's really great for. And after I was done with the first urn, I packed the second one and allowed them both to dry. And dolls, although it's not finished, I'm really pleased at the overall design, but I should have measured for the height of the ceiling. But I figured since the wire was flexible, I'd be able to manipulate it in a way that it would fit. So I'm really excited about the design. I'm really excited and ready to decorate it, but let me allow it to dry. Now, I did have a little spare piece that was left over from what I packed into the urns for the archway. And milliput is kind of what I consider a precious medium, and it's very useful in instances where you can't bake the item or you need something to harden really quickly. And it's also more durable than air dry clay to me. And I have a doll that I recently got as a gift from my friend Carol, and she has really nice feet, but the shape of her foot is not balanced where it would allow her to stand up and be stable. So I created her some boots with the spare milliput. So I just packed the milliput around the shape of her foot and went up a little bit higher on the ankle to create sort of like a boot shape. And after I totally covered her foot, I shaped it around to make it where it would be in proportion with her body. They're not going to be real delicate and dainty, but I still don't want them to look like clunky work boots on her. And I worked on it as much as I could with the gloves, and then I had to get in there with my bare hands. And you just really want to work with it until you get a shape that, again, is in proportion to the size of your doll and something that looks attractive. Now, I wasn't going to go into a lot of detail and do a whole lot of intricate carvings or anything. I just wanted to make sure she could stand up stable. And after I got one boot in a decent shape, I started to work on the second one. And again, dolls, you just want to play with it until it looks in a way that's pleasing to your eye. Now, don't worry. At first, it's going to look kind of clunky and clubby, but you just, again, just have to continue to work with it. Milliput is really handy with building and creating things, and it really comes in handy for things that can't be put in the oven. Now, dolls, milliput will stay pliable as long as you continue to work with it. Whenever I realized she was level and stable, I set her aside and allowed the epoxy to harden. Now, getting back to the archway, now that it's dried pretty solid and it's able to stand up, I can really see it's a really great design and it's really going to work well. So I want the decorations to be very simple. So I'm using some tiny peak flowers that I have. Now, I actually am adding some additional glue to them to ensure that they don't unravel. And then I began to place them one by one on the vine. And I placed them on kind of scattered because I really didn't want the arrangement to look too calculated. And when I was done, I really felt like it turned out really nice. It looked very simple, soft, and romantic. Now, I had considered adding some other embellishments and decorations like that, but I thought they looked a little bit modern for the time. So I thought I would just go ahead and stick with the flowers. And I did end up making a tiny bow to put right at the top of the archway. Now, in addition to the tiny pink bow, I had some white silk ribbon. And I just wrapped it gently around the vine because it's not going to be a permanent part of the archway. So at this point, I went on to work on my Unity candle setup. So I had two tall candlesticks and some little clay candles that I had made a couple years ago. They were a little bit big for the opening of this candlestick, so I did have to end up tapering them a little bit at the bottom to make them fit. And then after I tapered them, I added a little glue and allowed them to dry. Now, I only had two of the tall ones, well, at least that's all I could find, and I needed a third one. So I gathered together some silver-toned jewelry findings, bead caps and beads in different shapes and sizes, and I stacked them together with some Loctite glue to create a new candlestick. And when I got done, I thought it was very decorative, very pretty. And with the Unity candle dolls, if you're not familiar with it, it's using two separate candles together to light one candle in the center and blow out the other separate candles. to symbolize the beauty of the beginning of one new life and the end of the two separate lives. So I really wanted the center candle to be kind of ornate and pretty. And after I selected all of my beads, I just played around with different ways to stack them in different sequences. Now, dolls, this is another one of those little projects where I really didn't have a plan. I just simply gathered together a lot of pieces in the tones that I wanted. And then I simply began to play, dolls. Many times I think we really underestimate how powerful playing is. Your imagination will blossom in the midst of play. No boundaries, no guidelines, just fun. And sometimes you'll make mistakes and sometimes it won't look so great, but if you keep playing, you will discover what you're looking for. And after you come up with something you really like, if it makes you feel better, you can go ahead and write it down and you can feel like you're following directions next time. And the amazing part about doing things like this is that you'll make something really amazing one time and you'll wonder why you can't get it exactly the same way the second time. My daddy told me that we weren't created to make duplicates because we're original and one of a kind. So whatever you create is going to be original and one of a kind. I used to think there was something wrong with me because I couldn't duplicate it. Daddy helped me to understand that there was nothing wrong with me, that's why we create molds and patterns to get close to the original, but it's never exactly the same. Now, while I had all my wedding things out, I did want to glue the table together, but previously I painted the little tiered cake tray silver and added trim to it. And here I'm just arranging the pieces of cake to determine where I want them to be before I glue them down permanently. Then I turned my attention to the little round table I was given. Now I did want to make sure it was permanent, so I added glue to the base and allowed it to dry. But then I realized it was kind of short when I held my doll next to it. It was going to be really, really low. So I tried to look at different ways to raise it and actually use the part of some stackable containers to make the pedestal a little bit taller or to a comfortable height for my dolls. So I added glue to the base of that and then glued the stackable piece to raise it up. Now all of this is going to be covered by a tablecloth so you won't see that modern blue plastic. Now I had several different pieces as options to cover the table, but again I wanted to do something that looked really pretty but really modest. So I chose this soft pink floral that had a really tiny stripe to it, and I tried to size it around the table and cut the corners off to make the shape of the tablecloth rounded to match the table top, but I wanted it to puddle a little bit. Just then I remembered I needed to check my tiny boots, and even though they were getting hard, they weren't solid yet, so they still allowed for a little bit of manipulation. Now, if you can notice and see as I'm touching it, it's causing my fingers to be black, and that's one of the main reasons why I was using gloves in the beginning. But there's no harm because it washes off easily with soap and water. Now at this point I did do a little bit more refining, but again my main objective was to make sure she was level. Then I turned my attention back to the tiny table and began to add the water and glue solution to the fabric to cause it to drape really nicely and to puddle on the floor. Again, I want to stabilize it with the tablecloth. As it dries, the glue will harden. Pedestal tables can be kind of tricky in miniature and are prone to topple over. The firm tablecloth will really help a lot to make sure it stays firm and balanced to hold whatever I put on the surface. Now that the milliput is pretty much hardened inside the tiny urns, I thought it would be nice to add a little dirt. And when I say dirt, I mean tea leaves. Now, don't use your good tea for this, dolls. This is some tea that I really don't drink or I've had for a long time, so I think it's kind of stale, but I think it works out really great as soil or dirt for my miniature projects. Definitely take your time with this. It's a little bit messy, but it's worth it because it looks really, really authentic and realistic. And a little watered down Mod Podge will seal it all in. Now dolls, here I am again playing, trying to set things up and get a feel for how things are going to look. So I decided to try things out inside a room box. Now I have this long banquet table that actually belongs to the new upcoming project, but I figured I would borrow it for the wedding since it's a related event. I found this tiny column that at one point I thought I would use to make a table with, but I'm thinking it will work out nice for this project It's a little decorative, and I think it's good for holding a floral arrangement. Because although I think the flowers on the archway are really pretty, I think there needs to be more flower arrangements in the room where the ceremony takes place. So I'm feeling really good about my Unity candle setup on that table. I really like the dark wood. So I pulled out some flowers that had been gifted to me and decided I would use them to fill a little thimble and create a little floral arrangement. Now be careful when using hot glue dowels, especially in a metal thimble. This is really not a good idea because it got really hot, but I was using it to set the flowers in rather than use soil or the milliput. And it worked well. You definitely have to do your arrangement quickly before the hot glue dries. And when it was done, I had created a really cute arrangement that I thought would look really cute on that pedestal. And although my original purpose for making it was to sit it on the pedestal, I tried it out on the altar table and I thought that was cute too. Then I got another idea. So I took 2 blooms from those pink berry clusters and used a couple toothpaste caps and filled them with hot glue. While the hot glue was still soft, I put a few of the leaves from the original stalk that I trimmed down. I put those in first and then added the pink blooms to the center. And when I was done, I liked it so much that I made a second one. And this is just another example to really show you that when you allow yourself to play, you get more ideas. So just like that, couple toothpaste caps, a thimble, and some spare flowers, I made some wonderful arrangements for the wedding. Now, dolls, I did come back to the thimble arrangement because I realized that one of my blooms had fallen on the floor. So I did have to add additional glue to add that 5th bloom. And now that I've made the toothpaste cap blooms, I can use this on the pedestal. Now, I did have one more idea that I needed to get out of my head. So I added gesso to another one of the little communion cups and pulled out a few stalks of the other flowers. Now these were a little bit taller and it worked out okay because I just had enough to make one really good arrangement, so it's not going to be a symmetrical setup, and I really like that because I really like it when things look a little bit more random than so calculated and symmetrical. So I filled the communion cup up with hot glue and then placed the floral pieces in it in the way that I wanted them to stand when it was cooled. Now I didn't show it here, but I did end up adding glue and tea dirt to that tall stalk plant. Now dolls, in this frame or next few frames, I'm just going to allow you to watch me play. I did create a tiny bow and I actually placed it right at the center of the curve in the archway. So I'm just trying to arrange things to see how I'll set them up in the house. I'm definitely going to have to rearrange some furniture and move things around. And here, dolls, I'm just showing you that I added a little bit of pink ribbon around the rim of the toothpaste cap. Thimble pot, I used the same ribbon and created a tiny bow and glued it around the outside. So now I'm really feeling like things are coming together. I think I have a nice collection of lovely flowers that'll really enhance the setting where the ceremony is to take place. Now let me pull out some of the other items and bring everything all together. I really love the Unity candle and the bow hanging from the top of the arch. And I think those pink potted plants look really pretty on the altar table as well. And then the silver one on the column pedestal, I think that looks really pretty. So let's get the other stuff. Now, dolls, you can see here I've pulled together some of the other items that I created for the wedding reception and the ceremony. If you haven't seen me make the cake, I will leave a link in the description. Now, dolls, I did add another floral arrangement in the back, but it's just dried flowers in a vase. Now, dolls, if you've enjoyed this video today and you want to continue to see content like this, let me know in the comments and go ahead and subscribe. And always look for me on Mondays and Wednesdays after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I sure have enjoyed creating this video for you dolls today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.